So I get the honor to introduce a very special person. Everyone, I don't think you really need an introduction though at this point, right? So this is Susan. And what's kind of cool, and you don't know this, but so I stay in the shadows most of the time, and I hate doing this stuff, hate talking. And in 2015, we were like, let's go to EECon to see what's going to happen, to a conference. And we went to Detroit and met you for the first time, which I was antisocial, that one too. And we saw community base, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So we went back to 16, and I was a little bit less antisocial that time. That was in Denver, and we got to know Susan a little bit better. And Susan inspired me to want to get more involved in the community, so you don't know that. So anyway, very, very cool, very passionate, extremely talented on the UX side of the fence. You are currently at Oracle, leading a UX team, is that right? That's right. And I don't think you're going to find anybody more inspirational as far as wanting to be in a community and actually caring about everybody. That's something that we're huge, so that's why I appreciate your friendship and everything that you've kind of helped us do. She has referred business to us as well, so yeah, she's gonna refer a client to everyone in here since you're in here. So anyway, this is Susan Snipes.
Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Great. I am here to talk with you about UX, and thanks for the nice intro. For a long time, some of you may know this, I ran a digital agency, Q Digital Studio, and then last year changed that to just do UX consulting, and under my firm, UX Within Reach. And during that time, I also started working at Oracle as a user experience designer and strategist. So I'm doing that now. And I wanted to put together this talk because I think a lot of you know or hear that user experience is really important. Hopefully some of you have incorporated some of those processes into your work. Maybe you're even lucky enough to have a user experience or researcher or designer that you work with. But I know from my days at Q Digital Studio, even though we knew that we should be more user-focused, it wasn't always that easy. And who here works at an agency? Okay. Does anyone at an agency have a dedicated user experience person? Awesome, that's cool. And well, I want to talk with you more. But for all the rest of you, you may be able to incorporate some of the UX user experience into your practices, but I also know if you're a smaller agency like mine was, it can be overwhelming, and there's a lot of stuff that you could do. There's a ton of information out there. What really should you be doing? What's actually going to be effective? So that's why I took the approach that I took with the company UX Within Reach, which is to make user experience design and process more understandable and approachable. So hence Within Reach. And I thought it would be a good talk for this group because there are a lot of web developers here. In this room, I know some project managers, front end, back end, whatever. And if you don't have a dedicated user experience person on your team, someone's probably doing it. And so you kind of are stuck with it even if you don't really feel that comfortable about it. So I'm just going to tell you this now so you can think about it with the context of the talk. It's user experience UX because it involves users. So not to be scary, but if you're not involving users, it's not user experience. And that you can become more user-centric today. And it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. You have stuff that you can do now. It's pretty easy, and hopefully you'll want to. So I'll just do a little bit of UX just to get us all warmed up in like UX thinking and UX space. First, let's talk about bad UX, because that's always fun. Here's bad UX in our everyday world. Could you imagine using that elevator? I mean, I don't even understand what's going on there. I'm pretty sure if anyone is in California, you see signs like this all the time. I think that's from Southern California. And I think I just wouldn't use that bathroom. And of course, we have it all the time in software. The classic, like, errors are notoriously bad. Sign-ins, like, okay, yes, it's incorrect. Thanks for the help. You feel this all the time, and I'm sure your clients do too. I'm confused, frustrated. Why is there an error? However, good user experience is also in our everyday life. The bathroom handles, I know it's not a replacement for those ridiculous stall doors, but this is cool, right? Not only could you see without knocking on a stall door or pushing on it or looking under at someone's feet, it's either in use or it's vacant. You couldn't see red or green without even having to read it, but then if you're colorblind, you can read it too. I know Target doesn't do those prescription bottles anymore, but they were pretty awesome. And this was a parking schedule to replace 4 or 5 or 6 signs, and it was actually tested in LA. I'm not certain what happened with that, but I mean, that makes a lot more sense, and you can actually process that a little more quickly. And better solutions are in our software too, and I'm sure a lot of you think about these already, like the MailChimp one. If you aren't sure what you typed, you can just see, press the I can see what my password is. I do not actually use that for my password, just for reference. And then when people have great user experiences, they may not necessarily think that out loud, but they will have those types of feelings of something that's useful or easy or feels secure. And a lot of times, since we deal with a lot of bad software, it is a relief. And user experience is about the entire experience. I put this slide up of Apple because they have brought user experience into a lot of people's awareness, and people know how to talk about it more as a result of their work. Because user experience is from any touch point that someone has with a product, from walking into the store to opening the package to using their devices or software. So, user experience, UX. And it can sometimes be used interchangeably with user experience design, but for the purposes of this talk, user experience is like the actual experience of what someone's feeling when they're using a software product and their perception of it. And user experience design is the process of creating products with an intention to be meaningful and relevant. So UX design is that process. UX is what you're experiencing. So the elements of user experience design, just kidding. This is going to be more approachable. You don't have to worry about that. If you are a user experience researcher or designer, you, I'm sure, spend time on this and you would all think about that stuff. But we're not going to talk about affinity diagrams and contextual whatever. I don't even remember what's behind there. Cognitive walkthroughs. What you need to know is that UX design is user-centered. It's not UX if you're not working with users. It doesn't matter what lingo and language and whatever you learn. Yes, you do have to care about visual design and information architecture and that, but really it's about what your users are doing with the products that you're creating for them. So, hopefully you already believe UX matters, but I'll tell you about why it matters even more than you knew. If you think good design is expensive, you should look at the cost of bad design. It's going to be much more expensive. Here are a few costs of bad user experience. Negative perception of a brand, low sales, not enough users, errors, wasted time. It's expensive. It costs more to support bad stuff. It costs more because you have to train people on it more. You will probably have to redesign or rebuild soon, unless you're willing to live with it, which then just starts the whole thing over again. So ultimately, you will end up with unused products or software, and as agency people, you will have unsuccessful clients, and they're who we are here to serve. They're paying the bills for us. So there's a lot of information about some stats that, if you're selling stakeholders on the dangers of bad UX, this was just one I saw, which is one in 3 people will abandon a purchase because they can't find the right information. So a third, that stat is down there at the bottom. They had a lot of other, oh, the link is at the bottom. They had a lot of other good information. So a third of sales just incomplete from bad UX. But good UX, you can also sell it this way: positive perception, higher user adoption, more, it's faster, less costs for support, less costs for trainings. You aren't reworking as often, you're not going through those major overhauls. If you are here for the growth-driven design talk, that's the same stuff. The UX is, that's the same process. We just want to change that so there's less rework, and so your clients are successful. And your clients will be successful because you're caring about their users, their customers. And then selling good UX is also pretty easy. Clients like numbers. Every dollar invested in UX returns $10 to $100. So for every $1, it could be a 100-fold increase. It's more effective when you do it sooner. So empathy is at the heart of design. Without understanding what others see, feel, and experience, design is pointless. It's more like decoration. Design really is to solve a problem. And why would you want to involve users? We kind of know some baseline of what makes user experiences better. Yes, we can do better error messages or make sure our elevator buttons are not wacko. But
I want to know where that elevator is.
Yeah, I'm not.
I really do. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't either, but I want to see it.
So, understanding your users will help you know what to build them. You're actually creating a design that's relevant for them, not for your stakeholder, or not for you or your team, or not for what someone's impression is. And of course, they'll create easy-to-use, pleasurable designs. That's a part of UX that a lot of us already know and are familiar with. And then you'll know what your return on investment actually is. So, you're not the user. I know this isn't any of us. It's not me, but some guy. I just want to remind us that you are not the user. I'm not the user. It's possible that a couple of people in here might have users that are like them if you're, say, selling EE add-ons to EE developers, but everybody else, you're not the user. And your stakeholders aren't either. Your client probably knows a lot about their users, but they're still not the user. They understand what they're trying to say more about their brand than the user who doesn't care about that or doesn't know about that, and they shouldn't need to. So yes, of course you can learn about users. And this list is for people that do not have a user experience researcher or designer on their team. The two I circled were that's what we're going to talk about. You can talk to users. I know that's a crazy idea, but it's amazing. And the other one that's pretty cool is watch users at work. Kind of strange, but we can talk a little bit more about that too. So we'll get back to that. And then these other ones, you can do this probably now, and for anyone here that is having a UX role on your team without being an official UX person, you can get keyword searches, you can analyze stats on pages. If your client has customer service reps, you can ask them, what are these questions? So that's all possible now. And let's talk about talking with users, the user interview. But let's change it to just calling it talk to users, because that's better, right? User interview sounds very UX-ish and formal. So I very frequently get to talk to people, and I'm an introvert, so here I am up here talking to you about this. But I like to do it by web-based video. I use Zoom for it a lot, and then I can record it. They're comfortable, I'm comfortable. And yes, that's my job, but it could also not be that big of a deal for the person on your team who currently talks to stakeholders. If you ask your stakeholder, hey, I would like to talk with one of your users, who would be a good person that I could talk to? It's amazing what you can learn. And I just have a couple points up there about how you can go about doing that, and I can certainly talk to you more about that process of talking with people. But really, it's just a conversation. You know, there's tons of information out there if you wanted to get into like how you should talk to a user. But if you're friendly and you have an open mind and you're curious about them, that's what it's all about. I have that last purple bullet there if you are someone that's on the team but not actually going to be talking directly to the user, or if you have a user experience person on your team. So if you're a developer or designer or project manager and you're part of that, just ask to join those conversations with users. It's pretty cool, and you can just be there silently, not even on the video if you want to, and you'll get to hear straight from the mouth of someone what their needs and challenges are. So do you feel like you could do this user experience research maybe next time you have a chance to talk to a client? Ask their stakeholder. And then contextual inquiry, this is the other one that I really like to do that's very attainable and approachable, but we will call it watch users work. Again, you can do it by web-based video. This is cool because you're not like setting up a formal interview where you like have a camera and someone's like recording them and the user's like, okay, now what should I do? You actually can just say, hey, how would you go look this up in this application that you use every day? And you'll see some very fascinating things. You might get to do this now with the clients that you have, like if you're training them on using the Expression Engine control panel or something like that. If you don't do that already, that's another good one. And then you can ask your customers, your clients, the same thing. Like, you have this really important user that buys your products all the time or uses your client services all the time. Can I talk to them and see what their day looks like, for some of their most common tasks? I put this item here in pink because I hear so often from people that like the regular everyday user for a lot of your clients gets frustrated a lot, and it sounds a little bit like therapy, but they just like someone see sometimes their pain, and then you'll know what it is too. So that's getting back to the empathy. So again, this is kind of fun if you like being scientific and like getting into things. You can watch people work. If you're not involving users, it's not UX, just reminding you. So let's just say you get to do these, the talking to users and watching users work. You'll get a lot of interesting data. Hopefully you will record that, or if you're lucky enough that you have a couple people on one of those calls, someone can make some notes while you record it, and you'll get to learn more about what their needs and challenges and wishes are, and then you can use that to make problem statements. And I put based on real data, so these are some people. This is, if any of you use Agile or Scrum or Agile-ish, which is kind of what we did at my last agency. It's similar to doing a user story, but it's a little bit different because it's focused on a user's emotional side and some of their obstacles and their feelings. So this is the format of it. This is like the most UX-ish I get here, so hopefully it's good. I just had a sample that I grabbed from a screenshot. I kind of anonymized it slightly. And when you're talking with end users, you will get, these were just quotes that come under the pain points. If you're lucky enough to do personas or do something like user roles on your team, then you might be able to associate that with a particular person. But when you create your problem statement, you're doing it a little bit differently than a user story. So going back to this sample, a particular user type or persona who feels a certain way about something needs to do something else, but they're running into trouble. So in this case, I'll use the bottom ones. Someone made an inquiry. This is from an adoption site about a child, and I want to know when I'm going to hear from somebody. I mean, this is kind of heavy stuff, and these are real people that have problems like this. So a new adoptive parent, and this is the problem statement, a new adoptive parent feels frustrated about the process of making child requests or inquiries and needs updates but faces a lack of information about the status of an inquiry. That could actually be written a lot better so it's even more approachable. But having that empathy for what someone's going through rather than, oh, we need a status update, we need to make sure that's available for someone, is very different. And I think this can roll very well into the workflow that you have. So if you're doing any of these things, Agile Scrum or Agile-ish, like we were doing, Lean UX uses testable assumptions or growth-driven design if you're using any of those things, or whatever your process is, you can think about how you can create problem statements that will fit into your workflow. Whoops, let's back up a second. And I want to talk about who's responsible for good UX. Even if you're lucky enough to have a UX person on your team, it is not just the responsibility of the UX designer or UX researcher. It's the entire team's responsibility, and it's just something that should be permeated through your process and culture and that part. So if you would like to start supporting user-centric design more in your process, here are a few things that you can do. The left side are things that you can do right now with whatever role you have, asking questions, staying open-minded, giving feedback, sharing your concerns about the process. And when you set up these, talking with users and watching users, you can be there to meet them or attend the interviews. If you have personas, I know a lot of people like to actually print them out and post them so they can look at them, and you can use problem statements in part of your workflow. Coming back to the key takeaways, if you're not involving users, it's not UX. And you can become user-centric today. I think it's possible for all of you. That's the end of my presentation. That was a secret bonus. If anyone has a question, maybe I have answers. Yes?
I'm just wondering, how would you choose the users that you want to shadow or interview? Do you choose your best customers or just kind of what you?
That is a great question. Let's see. Well, ideally this would be in a larger process where you know for your project what, let me think about that for a second. You would have this built into your process from the beginning so that you know sort of what problems you're trying to solve from stakeholder interviews or whatever that might be. If your client can identify some of those people for you, that would help. They don't always know the answer to that one. If you have done something like personas or roles, then you know this, let's just say a content editor, because that's an easy one. You could ask the client, can we talk with someone? So ideally you would know some of the most important problems you're trying to solve, and I match those up with people that fit that. Does anyone have another question? Yes.
Do you use any of those automated testing tools like Mouseflow or Hotjar that kind of track the users? I mean, it's I'm sure not as good as talking to actual users, but
it can. I don't actually use it. I think Hotjar is one that I have used a little bit, and I think it can be very useful. It doesn't talk as much. I mean, it cannot get you to the why someone's doing something or what they're trying to do, but it's really helpful for pointing out usability problems, which is a big piece of user experience. So I think they're good if you can use them.
So more like identify a problem and then go talk to the users, or it can help to signify when you need to talk to your users.
Yes. You said that very well. Does anyone have another question? Yes.
How many users would you suggest testing for a specific user?
If you want to talk to users, and let's just say, depends on where you are as 1 is better than none, 5 is better than 4, 99 is not necessarily better than 98. I would typically, depending on what the project is, 3 to 5 is what I like to do. 5 is really an ideal number, but 3 goes a long way. So Yeah, and I think 3 and 5 is like, you could talk to 3 clients, I mean, or customers, end users. That's pretty achievable, but 5 is pretty nice too. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you have any advice on how you would work in UX in a low budget project that is fairly standard in our?
Oh yeah, that is a good question. Let me think about a good context what that might be. Like, that might end up in like a marketing type site project,
Yeah.
or okay.
Yeah.
I think we didn't talk about usability because I feel like that's something that agencies know a lot better and it's a little easier to test with, and I think this user point of view is overlooked a lot more often. That's something that would go a long way, and I'll just mention a couple things about that, which is it's when someone can, when you're, I have a lot to say. It's sometimes hard when there's like too many things floating around. As soon as you can earlier in the process, it's helpful to talk to users. But if you only have a couple of opportunities in a smaller budget project, it would be nice to have, like, say, one user that your client can rely on that would be a good representative, and just say, you would ask, can I talk with someone at the beginning of the project, and can I talk with someone when we have a design to review, or if it's a little bit far enough along, so that it's approachable and you can do it at the beginning and farther along. At the beginning, you would be just checking to make sure that the stakeholder clearly identifies actually knows some of the issues that users have, and later on, ideally you would want to have a lot of, you would have done work so that no one's finding the usability issues that you already know better than doing. You actually get to them and say, like, oh, is it confusing that this button is here? Not, oh, I clicked the button and it didn't go anywhere. You want to make sure that you optimize when you ask them to be able to talk with the user. I hope that helps. More questions? Well, I have other questions. You can tell me if you want to know the answer. Who wants to hear the answer to this one? Oh. That's funny. I think every project needs a user experience design if it has users. So if your project doesn't have users, or if you are the user, no wait, even then it's user experience design. It's just, if no one's going to use it, then you can skip it. We kind of talked about this, but I'll clarify that stakeholders are not the best users because they should be giving you your business problem. They're going to have a different viewpoint than the user, so they shouldn't be your user. You still definitely should be talking with them, and they're the people to talk to first, but then you need the user point of view after that. I didn't talk about this that much earlier, but I want to now. Hopefully many of you know this, but some of you, user experience design, and this lingo is crazy. User experience, it has the word design in it, but that doesn't actually mean that user experience designers are actually designing visual things. So some user experience designers might be good at visual design, but some of them are purely researchers, and they are going to want to spend time talking with people and using data and stuff like that. So that's just a reminder that it's not. Yes, I have. Yeah, exactly. But it's very functional.
It is.
When do you need a user experience designer? That kind of addressed your question. For smaller projects, do you need one? I don't think you need a dedicated person, but you would want to have someone who's in that role, who's going to make sure that the voice of the user is heard and the user perspective. And when, as far as like the timing, you need it. You don't just need it at the beginning, and you don't just need it at the end. It's best to have user experience design focused throughout the project. So, as you're putting together your project outcomes, the scope, all of those things, it's best to have that. Yes.
Along the kind of the timeline of UX. What about when an app is like really close to going out the door? Mm-hmm. Is that like a nightmare for you, or is that like so I'm thinking of a particular use case that I have, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Say an app. Yeah.
app. It's going to go out the door soon.
Are you asking, you're not asking for a friend, are you, Tom?
Which app is this?
So there's a Laravel app about to go out the door. There's some issues that I know of. Is that like a nightmare situation for you as a UX person to say, hey, coming in at the 11th hour?
You know what? I'm glad you asked this question because I think it's so user experience designers like get the reputation of like, oh, we need to make sure everything's perfect. Not, maybe you don't have that impression, but I think and user experience designers and like want everything to be perfect, but let's just think back to like who's going to use the app. The customer. Would the customer rather have an imperfect experience and be able to use the app? Would the client rather have the customer have an imperfect experience and use the app, say the app builder, or wait another week for something perfect? Do you have an answer?
In this case, more perfecter than it is.
Oh, well, it has to work.
There's some pretty big, for me going through it, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like.
Did I already get a refund?
There is some point where it should be good enough. That's my answer. I think it should be good enough, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, I like the lean UX process, and I like being as iterative as possible. I don't want things to be broken, but we have to put it out and get it fixed. Yeah, ship it. That wasn't necessarily about that app, but yeah.
In other words, there's this great new web app.
Maybe you wonder about this one. Was it going to make the project take longer? Well, it could. If you want the project to be better, if you don't actually care about the outcome and you need something to just be done quickly, you could skip UX design and then you can, release something tomorrow. That one's an it depends answer. It doesn't have to. The time from when user experience research for the type of work we do, it doesn't need to take months. It can be done pretty quickly. And then it's going to mean a lot less revisions during the original whatever your release time is, and then for the future. Oh, someone asked this question. That was good job. How did that slide get in there? I don't even know how to answer this. But I probably did answer it earlier. Yes, it costs something, but you get the return for investing in it. So in the end, it's more valuable. Hey, check it out. Now this is really the end. If you're not involving users, it's not UX, and you can become more user-centric today. The key is really just to be thinking about the user. We all have to think about our clients, but ultimately, your clients are successful if their users can do what they want to do. Thank you. That's a good question.
And I think users is a word that sometimes makes me twitch.
I know people want to get away from using it in some cases, that they might want to use customers or whatever. I use it because it's clear. So, yeah, it would be fine to use another word. I think it's going to be around for a while.
Oh, I think so too.
I will answer other questions. I didn't realize that my talk was that short, so if you want. Yes. Great question. I mean, ideally, you would have a plan for it from when you're. Oh yes. Let me see if I can summarize that well. It's kind of two questions. What if you already have a project and you didn't plan to put UX into it? And if you were starting out a project, when would you kind of roll that in? So if you are, I'll answer the second one first because it's easier. a plan for how you will incorporate users into the process, either from interviews or testing or whatever it might be, and how often. You just want to build it in. But if you didn't, the sooner the better. And then I think you already did your talk, right? Okay, good, because I don't know exactly what you're speaking about, but I know it's related to A/B testing. It's a perfect example of, like, if you have something that's kind of a make or break feature, or even a smaller one, that's the time that you can use testing. I mean, you can do it with A/B testing, but it's a great one for using users for that as well, for something that's a critical feature or a critical goal that your users have.
It's like you're sizing it as though, not having, you didn't take this, here's the risk. So that small upfront risk is small for relative to the risk of not building.
I'm not sure that I followed that.
If you're going to make a decision about, okay, this is a very big thing, so I have to be sure of it.
Yes.
So it gives you certainty,
Yes.
right? So the value of not knowing or knowing.
Yeah, it's
How I try to size it before.
it's weighing the risk. I mean, is it something that we can take a chance on or no? And if you can't take a chance on it, you know what to do. Ask some users or do some A/B testing. Yes.
With your new role at Oracle, what are some of the challenges that UX designers, or the team of UX designers are facing at DC? Can you repeat the question?
Yes, he asked, with my new role, what are some of the challenges that user experience designers, probably where I am, see? I can only answer that generally. Sorry. That's not a joke. I think they're universal user experience challenges, which is, it's hard to get to users. I mean, I made it sound like it's possible. It's way easier in an agency if you work with smaller clients. It's challenging at larger organizations. So I think that's a challenge. I feel like user experience design and this whole culture is something that is more present in, it certainly is in a lot of large organizations, otherwise they don't survive. So it's easier too, but I think a lot of people still don't really understand it. Yeah, that's kind of a general answer. Any other questions? All right, now we're really finished. Thanks, everybody.